Good morning. Today we're going to solve one variable inequalities. Here's an example of a one variable inequality. We're going to follow steps very much like solving basic equations. And when I say steps, really I just mean basic principles. We're going to do to one side of our equation what we do to the other to make sure that it stays balanced, although it's an inequality, not an equation. We're going to simplify as often as possible, and we're going to be trying to isolate the variable. So to begin with, let's start with simplifying. I noticed that there are a lot of parentheses, so let's go ahead and clean that up using the distributive property. Okay. That was a good start. Before I do anything else to solve, I want to simplify the left-hand side of the equation a little bit more to combine 20 minus 5. That's pretty easy. So at this point, we've simplified our inequality a lot. And next, I need to get my variables together so that I can begin to solve for z. In general, I like to move the smaller z's to the other side of the problem because I find that students tend to make less mistakes when they're dealing with a positive coefficient for z. Okay, now here we have a basic two-step inequality. The goal is to use inverse operations to get the variable by itself. And in general, you try to reverse the order of operations. So here I've got plus 15. Let's get rid of that. We've got to do to one side of our inequality what we do to the other, just like an equation. I do not need to reverse my inequality sign because my divisor is positive. It does not matter if your dividend is negative. And here I have a fraction, so negative 18 won't divide evenly by 4. So let's think about ways we could write the answer. I could use a decimal form of the answer. But in Algebra 2, a lot of your answers are just going to be easier if you write them in an improper, reduced fraction form. That's going to help you quickly move through this set of problems. So let's do that here. Well, since 18 and 4 both divide by 2, negative 9 over 2, that's probably the best way for us to write our answer in Algebra 2. Now we're going to solve this inequality, and we're going to cross multiply. When you cross multiply this inequality, pretend that these expressions are in parentheses. They do belong together, and so when I cross multiply 6 times 3x minus 3, I'm going to make sure to distribute the 6 to both of those terms. So I'm going to multiply by 6 here and multiply by 5 here. So I'm cross multiplying. It's important that the product go where the numerator you are multiplying is. So just keep that in mind with inequalities. Because you have that inequality sign, you've got to make sure that everything ends up in the right, on the correct side of the problem. So now when I distribute, here is my new, simpler inequality. So that process of cross multiplying was actually a way to just simplify our problem and make it easier for us to solve. Again, I like to always move the smaller number of x's because that's going to ensure you have a positive coefficient for x, and I think that's much more important than trying to have the x on the left-hand side of the problem. But that's just my opinion. From here, I've got a two-step inequality. So I'm going to use inverse operations, again, to isolate the variable. and here is the solution to this particular problem. So today we've worked on how to solve some inequalities that maybe are a little bit unusual, and we've discussed that probably the best way to write answers that are not integers in Algebra 2 is an improper fraction.